Andrew Jackson was born in 1767 in the rugged Waxhaws region on the North-South Carolina border to Scots-Irish immigrant parents. At age 13, he served as a courier in the Revolutionary War and was captured by the British while helping rescue family members from a prison ship. In that situation, he famously refused a British officer's demand to polish his boots, prompting the redcoat to slash young Jackson's left hand with a sword, leaving him with a lifelong scar and a lifelong hatred for the British. After being released within days, his elder brother succumbed to illness, and his mother also died soon after, leaving Jackson an orphan at 15. After the war, he apprenticed as a lawyer in North Carolina, passed the bar in 1787, and in 1788 moved to the new frontier settlement of Nashville in Tennessee. There he rapidly began to make a name for himself, becoming a prosperous lawyer, a land speculator, a slaveholder, and soon a local figure. When Tennessee entered the Union in 1796, Jackson became its first U.S. congressman, then briefly a U.S. senator, and later a judge on Tennessee's Superior Court. Along the way, Jackson earned a reputation for hot temper and dueling. In 1806, he fought a famous pistol duel with Charles Dickinson over a political insult. Dickinson shot Jackson in the chest, but Jackson returned fire and killed him. Jackson carried the bullet from that duel in his body for the rest of his life. Historians estimate Jackson took part in anywhere from 5 to dozens of duels over his lifetime. The War of 1812 offered Jackson the stage to become a national hero. Although older Tennessee politicians doubted him, Jackson raised a regiment and was soon fighting in the Creek War, an allied conflict of the wider war. In 1813 to 1814, he led Tennessee militia and allied native forces deep into Creek territory, modern Alabama, to punish the Red Stick faction that had massacred frontier settlements. In March 1814, at Horseshoe Bend, Jackson's forces won a crushing victory, annihilating the main Creek force, as one account puts it. The defeat shattered the Creek Nation's power and forced them to cede some 23 million acres of land in Georgia and Alabama. Jackson's celebrity exploded. In May 1814, he received a regular army commission as a major general and took command of the southern frontier. The British then aimed to strike New Orleans, the vital port at the mouth of the Mississippi. Jackson hastily gathered a motley army, U.S. regulars, frontier volunteers, militia, free black soldiers, and even pirate Jean Lafitte and his men, to defend the city. On January 8, 1815, British General Sir Edward Pakenham launched a frontal assault on Jackson's entrenched lines. The result was a rout. British casualties numbered about 2,000 killed or wounded, while Jackson's army lost just 13 men. Interestingly, the battle occurred after the peace treaty, Treaty of Ghent, had been signed in Europe, but word had not yet reached America. The astounding victory catapulted Jackson to national fame, making him America's greatest military hero since George Washington. After New Orleans, he continued his army service and, in 1817, was ordered to lead a campaign in Spanish Florida, in what became known as the First Seminole War. In this campaign, he fought Seminole bands and Maroon communities that had conducted raids into Georgia, and he ultimately seized the Spanish forts at St. Mark's and Pensacola, actions that contributed to Spain's eventual decision to cede Florida to the United States. By 1821, Jackson had been appointed territorial governor of Florida, presiding over the formal transfer of power from Spain. He resigned in late 1821 and returned to Tennessee, where his friends were already preparing to make him a presidential candidate. Back in Tennessee, Jackson briefly served as a U.S. Senator, 1823 to 1825, but from the start, his sights were on higher office. In 1824, the presidential field was crowded. John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, William Crawford, and Jackson all vied. Unlike the others, Jackson was largely an outsider, lacking elite credentials. He appealed directly to the common man, speaking passionately against entrenched Eastern elites. That year, Jackson won a plurality of both the popular and electoral vote, but not an outright majority. When no candidate got a majority of electors, the House of Representatives decided the election. House Speaker Henry Clay threw his support to Adams, and Adams won. Jackson and his followers cried foul, denouncing it as a corrupt bargain. Clay was promptly made Adams's Secretary of State. Stung but still popular, Jackson vowed to return in 1828. He ran an aggressive campaign as a champion of democracy against aristocratic privilege embodied in the patrician president John Quincy Adams. This populist message paid off. In 1828, he soundly defeated Adams. The election of Andrew Jackson in 1829 marked the ascendance of a new political order, Jackson's Democratic Party, and the first time in U.S. history that a man born in the frontier West, or Tennessee, took the presidency. Jackson entered the presidency determined to wield executive power vigorously and to honor the broad public mandate he believed he had earned. His administration made dozens of consequential decisions that would shape the nation. From the outset, Jackson strongly supported the removal of Native American tribes from their ancestral lands in the Southeast, a process that modern historians often characterize as ethnic cleansing. In 1830, he signed the Indian Removal Act, which authorized the negotiation, and often coercion, of treaties to force the so-called 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole, westward. As Jackson's administration intensified pressure on these tribes to relocate west of the Mississippi River, the Supreme Court issued a decision in 1832 intended to protect Cherokee sovereignty against Georgia's expansionist laws. Famously, Jackson is said to have responded, "Marshall has made his decision. Now, let him enforce it." This stance laid the groundwork for the escalation of removal policies under his successors, culminating in the infamous Trail of Tears. The Cherokee Nation was forced to march under brutal conditions, resulting in the death of roughly 1 in 4 Native Americans along the route. One Cherokee mother later recalled, "We walked until our feet bled into the snow. I buried my baby in a shallow grave on the side of the road because you wouldn't let us stop to mourn." Overall, this episode remains a profound stain on Jackson's legacy and on American history. Jackson also faced a major constitutional crisis over federal tariffs. Many Southerners, especially in South Carolina, hated the tariff of 1828, which they called the Tariff of Abominations. They believed high import taxes unfairly enriched Northern industries at Southern expense. In 1832, South Carolina declared the tariff null and void in its state and threatened to block federal revenue. Jackson took a firm line. Despite his own preference for a lower tariff, he saw nullification as a direct challenge to the Union, declaring in 1832 that the Union is indivisible and labeled nullification as treason. He even urged Congress to pass the Force Bill, authorizing him to use military power if needed. The crisis diffused in 1833 after Congress agreed to lower the tariff with a compromise, but Jackson's stand reinforced federal supremacy and likely prevented a first blow at the Union. During this crisis, he also famously vetoed federal internal improvement projects, for example, killing the Maysville Road Bill in 1830, on constitutional grounds, signaling that the federal government should not fund local infrastructure in one state. Jackson made eliminating the second bank of the United States a central goal. He distrusted banks and paper money, believing that they concentrated too much power and threatened liberty. In 1832, Congress passed a bill to recharter the bank. Its charter was due to expire in 1836, and Jackson vetoed it. His veto message famously cast the bank as a bastion of privilege, a monster that favored the wealthy at the expense of the common man. This policy decision is widely regarded as a major mistake. The bank had acted as a proto-central bank, restraining reckless lending, ensuring a uniform currency, and sustaining American credit abroad. Once Jackson dismantled it, he redistributed federal deposits to politically loyal pet banks that engaged in excessive lending and fueled speculative bubbles. The lack of regulation also encouraged these banks to print money freely, flooding the market with banknotes that drove inflation and speculation in Western lands. In an attempt to correct the chaos he had helped create, Jackson issued the Specie Circular, ordering that all Western land purchases be paid in gold and silver. This triggered a nationwide drain on bank reserves, forcing banks to tighten lending, call in loans early, and refuse to redeem their own notes, which shattered public and international confidence and prompted widespread bank failures. As banks suspended payments and credit evaporated, businesses collapsed, unemployment soared, and the overheated land market imploded, plunging the nation into the Panic of 1837, one of the worst depressions of the early republic. Jackson vigorously expanded presidential power in other ways. He used the veto more than all previous presidents combined, arguing it was within his authority to block legislation he believed unconstitutional or harmful. He also instituted a spoils system, rewarding political supporters with government jobs. The new president emptied many federal offices of previous office holders and filled them with loyal Democrats. This practice remains controversial, but Jackson defended it as democratic rotation. Domestically, he catered to Southern planters and Western settlers. He favored cheap public land policies, denounced abolitionist pressures, and supported expanding slavery where legal. He particularly clamped down on anti-slavery petitions. In 1836, Congress passed the so-called gag rule during Jackson's term, automatically tabling any petitions on slavery. Overall, Jackson remained immensely popular with many Americans. He expanded the political process. During his era, many more white males gained the vote as property requirements were lifted across the states. His supporters portrayed him as a champion of democracy. Old Hickory, the hardtack soldier sage whose toughness would protect the Union and its people. He became an anti-elitist icon, the original anti-establishment president. Yet his policies also provoked fierce criticism. Opponents labeled him King Andrew I, accusing him of monarchical ambition, and political cartoonists famously depicted him in royal robes trampling the Constitution. By the end of his second term, Jackson had redefined the presidency, expanding its reach and visibility in ways no prior chief executive had attempted. In his 1837 farewell address, he warned Americans about the insidious money power, reflecting his unyielding opposition to central banking. Ironically, despite his disdain for paper currency, which he blamed for financial crises, Jackson's likeness would later adorn the $20 bill. After leaving office in 1837, Jackson retired to his beloved Hermitage plantation near Nashville. Jackson's retirement was tinged with both pride and sorrow. His beloved wife Rachel had died of illness just weeks after his 1828 election, which Jackson long blamed on the stress of the campaign's slander. He never married again. In retirement, Jackson avoided politics but remained consulted by Democratic leaders. He continued to correspond and occasionally warred with the press. He also struggled with chronic health problems. By the late 1830s, he suffered from persistent pain, possibly related to the old dueling wound, as well as kidney and lung disease. The once indestructible warhorse gradually declined with age. On his deathbed, when asked if he had any regrets, he famously remarked that he was only sorry he had been unable to shoot Henry Clay or hang John C. Calhoun. His final words to his family and those he enslaved were, "Oh, do not cry. Be good children, and we will all meet in heaven, both black and white." Jackson died on June 8, 1845, at the age of 78. He was buried on the plantation grounds, where his gravesite became a site of pilgrimage for his admirers. Although he was one of the wealthiest ex-presidents of his time, owning thousands of acres and nearly 150 enslaved people, he died with significant debt due to his personal largesse and the recurring financial panics of the era. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deeper look into the fiery life of Andrew Jackson, a frontiersman's son who rose through sheer grit and iron will to redefine the American presidency, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell. Join us as we continue to charge into the stories of history's most formidable figures. See you next time.